All of a sudden, I'm totally out of my body now, floating above my body in this beautiful, magnificent mist where I'm feeling peace and love and this calmness. This beam of light came from behind me and lit up everything underneath me. All of a sudden, this beautiful gateway opens of light and color, and it just drew me right in. And now I'm in this tunnel, moving faster and faster. I feel like I'm moving at the speed of light. When I got to heaven, the first thing that came out of my mind, I'm home. I'm finally home. It's flickering, it's flickering. We're at a time in our life of choice. A voice said, Bill, this is your future outcome.
Recently, I booked a transformative energy healing session with Jamie from Refractive Healing. Through her divine energy healing, I found myself rejuvenated, reconnecting with my inner purpose and the universal energy that guides me. Jamie is a truly gifted healer. She seemed to intuitively grasp the challenges weighing on my soul and guided me towards a lighter, more enlightened path. I'm eager to share the secret gift with you, so please embrace this opportunity for healing by visiting the link below to book your complimentary energy healing session with Jamie. Let the journey of rediscovery begin. And now on to today's guest.
I was doing a trade show in Tucson, Arizona. I did about anywhere from 35 to 40 trade shows a year all over the United States at the convention centers. And I had a little jewelry business where I sold watches and jewelry and some ladies' accessories. It's the biggest gem and mineral show in the world. It actually it goes on for about 2 weeks, which is much longer than other shows. But there's at the Tucson vendor menu, not only the convention center is filled with vendors and people in the trade, but every hotel in the whole city is filled up with booths. And so the whole city turns into a show over a 2-week period. Now, this was in February every year. And in February here in the US, there's a lot of flus and viruses running around, bacterial. First day we were set up at the show where we were set up at a place called the Holodome. It was an indoor, if you ever could imagine a giant circus tent, but with a real floor on it. And they had, air conditioning or heat being pumped in it was laying on the desert outside next to the hotel because the convention hall in the hotel was filled. So we took a booth out there that year. And from the first day, there were people coughing here and there around the show. So I was fine. All the 2 or 3 people I had there with me at that time, they were all fine too. On the 3rd day of the show, everything was going well. It was so busy. I mean, people from all over the world. We're talking about Europe, Africa, Asia, all over the United States, South America, North America. I mean, it is just filled with people. So something came in that year, and it was a bad virus. They don't know. They didn't even know if it was bacterial or virus. So they were calling it a combination of both. They were saying it could be a bacterial, type of a virus going around. The lady across from our booth, the lady goes down. She's been coughing since the 2nd day. She just went flat down to the floor. And 15 years prior to that, before I had my own business, I was a paramedic in Miami, Florida. So I used to be a paramedic. So my old paramedic skills jumped in and I went running towards the lady. And she was on the floor already. And I just wanted to make sure that her breathing was good, her airway was open so she could breathe. So I tried to make her comfortable. I felt the heat coming out of her body. She was so hot. Well, I waited there until the paramedics came, and then I turned her over to them. That night, I came down with something, and Sabrina, I had the flu in my lifetime bad. I have never had anything like this in my life. Not only was I very high feverish, but my whole throat was swollen. It was swollen to a point where you could physically see how swollen it was. I could barely breathe. And at the same time, I had something occurring in my body that I never knew I had. Like I knew I always snored when I slept at night, but I didn't know I had what they call sleep apnea. So I found out that later on after this occurrence. So now I have this major bacterial or virus thing going on. Terrible fever, pains, my throat, can't breathe, almost closed down. So I went into the work that next morning, and all my people that were working for me, they just looked at me and said, "Bill, you got to get to the hospital." So I think I just topped out in a taxi. They drove me over to the hospital. What happened at that point, we got into the hospital, but there were so many people sick around the city, the emergency room was jam-packed. And they asked us, big groups of people they were going to, it says, if you don't mind going to this clinic or that clinic, other medical clinics around town. So they set me up in a different medical clinic. I went there, thank God, because they took me in right away, because I could barely breathe sitting there. They hooked me up, first of all, they said my oxygen is very low. And then they hooked me up with IVs. And now in the IVs, they're shooting in antibiotics in the IVs. They said they didn't know if it was viral or bacterial. They had no idea. All they knew was everybody was getting very badly, deadly sick. So I must have laid on that gurney for 4 hours because they went through I think they were working three-quarters of the way through the third bag. The IV was running because they said so fast because they say I was completely dehydrated too. And I didn't even realize that at the time. So after they got my oxygen levels up and they got all the antibiotics in me, it's a little different in the medical centers than it is over at the hospitals. Hospitals stay open 24 hours a day. But, our walk-in medical clinics here, they close at a certain hour. Whether it's 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night, they close. So right before closing, they came over and they said, well, your oxygen level's up. You have enough antibiotic in you. And they would give me a little bottle of antibiotics because they said, take it in about 5 or 6 hours, take another antibiotic. And then they gave me a little inhaler. They said, this will help you breathe a little better. So I used the inhaler a couple of times before I fell asleep, and I waited up until I could take the antibiotic. I took the antibiotic, Sabrina, I fell asleep, and that night turned into a night of light and love. It was beautiful. I physically remember, I'm about to tell you one of the most profound near-death experience stories you might have ever heard. I physically remember how I left my body. Now, I seen myself physically leave my body. I saw myself leaving my body. What I thought at the time was through my eyes. But now, through all the learning that I've done about this, it must have been my pineal gland. Because to me, it looked like I was going through my eyes. And I was leaving my body in this beautiful, glowing, magnificent green mist. My spirit was the color of that beautiful fern, but magnify that color. If you can magnify that color 100 times or even 1,000 times, that would be what I was. All of a sudden, I'm totally out of my body now, floating above my body in this beautiful, magnificent mist where I'm feeling peace and love and this calmness that physically took over my being. And it's my spirit is over my body completely, and all I see is this body on a bed. At the time, I'm totally detached now. I see a body on the bed, and from what I've learned afterwards is that the spirit stays around the physical body until the spirit's sure that the body has no life left in it. Once the spirit's sure it has no life left, this beam of light came from behind me and lit up everything underneath me. I didn't even see my body anymore. And immediately it turned me, and all of a sudden this beautiful gateway opens of light and color, and it just drew me right in. I mean, it drew me fast. I had no control over it. It drew me at the same time. It was wonderful. And now I'm in this tunnel, and I'm moving. And now I'm moving faster and faster. I feel like I'm moving at the speed of light. And the colors are whizzing by me and through me, and just the love keeps increasing. The love was so magnificent. It was wonderful. I felt like I was almost like I was being cradled by someone or something. And I'll never forget, because this went on for a while. We're moving and moving and moving. And I'll never forget the final destination, which I'll call heaven, because I believe in God and I'm Christian. But when I got to heaven, the first thing that came out of I'm going to say my mind, not my mouth, but you could hear it out loud. I'm home. I'm finally home. Thank God I'm home. And I'm saying this to myself out loud, and this family and friends all around. And then I hear this soft whisper in my ear. We'll call it my ear, even though I was in a free-floating form. It says, yes, Bill, you're home in the light of God. And I says, I know, I could feel him. And it was magnificent. It was beautiful. She said, my name is Antoni. I am one of your 3 guardians. And I said, one of my guardians? She says, yes, I'm responsible for bringing you in, and I'm responsible for bringing you home. I said, you were with me coming home? She said, you were with me coming home. And that must have been that cradle feeling that I felt, because everything was just whizzing around and by me. I felt like the colors were whizzing through me. It was magnificent. And then she says, you have 2 other guardians. As soon as she said 2, I see this beautiful, glowing, magnificent angel. I call them my guardian angels, approaching me. Now, to make this story up to date, my brother Peter died when I was 15 years old, and he died of a terrible cancer. And he was 30 at the time when he passed away. When this spirit approached me and he said, hello, Billy, I knew that was Peter's voice. And I felt an embrace like you never could imagine. It was so beautiful. I said, Peter, it was so beautiful. It was so real. It's 100 times more real. Your knowledge and wisdom use so much more of your actual mind. It's incredible. I think we use 6% of our mind here in human form. But once on the other side, or in heaven, I'll say, once on the other side, I feel like you might use maybe 90 or 100 of your capabilities. And it's wonderful because you can feel and hear everyone at the same time, and you're acknowledging everything, and you're with everyone. You could feel they're saying, and your spirits, we travel in our family spirit circle. So family and friends that are in our circle travel with us. And I could feel the greetings and Peter, and it was wonderful at this time. And then he says, Billy, we have to leave. We have to go. And I said, oh, I feel so wonderful. You know, it was magnificent feeling. And he says, we go to your life review. And Peter and I and Antonio were whisked off. And now we're in this beautiful, different level, all beautiful brightness and full of colors. And it's almost like a flickering screen starts in front of. Now this screen is showing me my whole life. It's showing me, at first it's showing me all the good things I've ever done in my life. It goes back to when I was a little boy. And it showed me how with my friends, I would take them to the ball games. I remember in 1963, we had the World's Fair. I took 2 of my friends along with me to the World's Fair. My mom and dad owned a bar and grill restaurant across from the ballpark there in Brooklyn, New York. It was Ebbets Field where the Brooklyn Dodgers played. And so I'm in this time of my life. And I'm a young boy still. When we were 10 years old, we were already traveling in the subway by ourselves and things like that. So I took him to Coney because a lot of my friends didn't have the money. We weren't rich by any means, but my mom and dad was comfortable. So whenever she had a little extra money, she would give me some and tell me to take your friend with you. And that was beautiful. So I did that a lot in my life. And my friends never took advantage of me. They always paid me back in some way or form. Like they'd have me over for dinner for their house for just unbelievable dinners. And I had almost every nationality there. I had friends that were Irish, other friends that were Italian, Jewish. I had every single nationality you could think of. And now they show me the good, the good, the good, the good. And then they take me to the time when I was a paramedic. I mentioned it earlier. They take me to the time when I'm a paramedic and it stops. That flickering stopped. It's like I'm in a flickering movie screen and it just stopped. And now I'm alongside my partner in our unit. We're heading up to our station in North Miami Beach. I'm working in Miami. no longer in New York. I had moved to Miami, Florida. And I'm working in Miami as a paramedic. And we're on the highway. So we're on I-95, it's called, heading northbound, going up to our station at 125th Street. Well, when we were about at 79th Street, a call comes over the radio. It says there's a 317 on 135th Street and I-95 northbound. We're already on northbound, and we're now, by the time they start talking, we're now at 85th Street. And our ETA, estimated time of arrival to this accident, was less than 2 minutes. So I picked up the mic right away. I said, call off our other unit because our partners at the station were called on the unit, but that was a 10-minute drive to where they were, at least 10 to 12 minutes. I said, call off unit 69F, 67F. We're going to take the call. We have a 1 minute ETA. Or less than 2 minutes, I said. When we got there was a pickup truck and a car. And the car was facing this way. And all I saw was there was a man in the pickup truck. He was just sitting there. All I saw, this car must have slammed into the back of the pickup truck. And this young boy, I'm going to call him, because he must have been about 16 years old. He's running around. I saw he had lacerations on his face and everything. So we got the medic bag out right away, went running towards him. And he starts yelling. He was yelling at us. By this time, he just sat down. He's yelling, my sister. And me and my partner, Danny, we both went like this. We look over, and his sister's head is through the window of the car. Her head was physically right up into the window, and the windshield was back here. So she had her body and half her head inside and the top of her head outside the glass. And Danny and I looked at each other, and we had assessment to make because the fire truck wasn't there with the cutters. We said, if we don't take her out, there's so much, blood from a head wound that it was all over the place. And actually, I ran out front on the car. So I'm on the hood of the car, basically leaned over, and I'm trying gently to pick up the top of her head and push it through to Danny, which he was sitting inside with her now at this time. He basically had her picked up almost on his lap. And I finally got him into her lap, and I ran around, and we both put our hand on her head while we took her over to the stretcher just a couple feet away. And now we run the stretcher over to the unit. Now I'm trying to put a gauze bandage on her head to hold it down, to get some of the bleeding to stop. But there was so much blood. It was just terrible. It was terrible. And she was totally out. She was totally out cold. At the time, I could see her body had some movement in it. So we're in the unit now. We're only maybe 135th Street. Parkway General Hospital was on 167th Street. So we're less than 2 miles away. Danny just hits it. I'm standing up in the unit, bracing myself. I wasn't even sitting down because I was holding the top of her head down with just a whole bunch of gauze pads underneath it. And then she starts to seize on me. A seizure. Everyone knows what a seizure is. Well, I have my hand cradling her neck and my other hand on top of her head, but her whole body is jumping off the gurney now. We move so fast We didn't even strap her in. We just had to get her to the hospital. And I yelled to her brother. I thought I was talking to her brother. I said, God, help me. And because he was sitting in the back of the unit with me, facing outside. I said, God, help me. Now, in my life review, not when it actually happened, back in the early 70s, not when it happened. In my life review, I saw Peter's hand come right in on her head alongside mine. And then we got to the hospital, and all the nurses were outside right away, and they carted her off and brought her right into the operating room. Well, we were just all shaken up. My partner and I was shaken up badly. We were both full of her blood, and we had to go back to the station and change our clothes because we were just about ready to get on a 24-hour shift. So we get all ready for the day, and all I could do is think of it. And my partners and the other group there said, Bill, stop taking your work home with you. You know, because all I could do is think of this young girl. She must have been 17, 18 years old. Her brother might have been a year younger than her or something like that. In Florida, you can drive when you're 16. So it's not like up north, you have to wait till you're 18 to drive. But I don't believe she was 18 even. So maybe she was 17, 18. I thought about it that whole day. That whole day, I could do nothing but think about that. Even as we were doing our runs, luckily we got mostly routine calls during the day. And about 2 hours or so in the next morning before we're ready to take our unit back, because we're on a 24-hour shift, I was shaking Danny to wake him up because I basically didn't sleep the whole night. I'm shaking him to wake him up. I said, let's go, Danny. He said, it's time to go to the station already? I said, well, no. I said, I want to go to Parkway. I want to go to Parkway General and find out what happened to that girl. When you get the book, you're going to see it was a different name I put on the hospital because some publishing company told you have to change the name of things, but this is the real name I'm giving you. So, and Danny said to me, Bill, she's dead. And I said, Danny, I have a feeling in me. I have to go to Parkway. So he finally agrees with me because it was about 7 or 8 miles out of our way north and then 7 or 8 miles back south. He says, well, if you got to go, let's get going. So we get to the hospital, and we know all the nurses in all the emergency rooms. And I went up to one of the nurses, I think her name was Joanne or Becky. I said, what happened to the girl we brought in yesterday morning? And when she looked up and said to me, you want to meet her? I had the hair on my arms stand up and my neck. It was unbelievable. I had the chills all over my body. So she takes us up to her room. The girl is sitting there now with a turban bandage on up to here, all around from the top of her head, all back to here. She's sitting up in bed and eating a Jello. And her brother was asleep when we first walked in. And then we must have been making a lot of noise because she didn't know who he was. She had no idea who he was. And her brother opened his eyes and he screams, that's the man that saved your life. And everybody was joyous then. The mother and father was there. They were half asleep on the little couch they had. And she was in bed smiling and laughing. The glass never penetrated her cranium, her skull. We thought it was inside the skull. She flipped back like she was scalped. All the skin from here all the way to the back of her head was flipped off to her skull. But you can't see that. You know, as we were taking care of her, we couldn't see it because there's so much blood and fatty tissue. We didn't know what it was. And there was little pieces of glass all over. So anyway, that was like a miracle. That was a miracle. Then they showed me a few other good things, and then they turned it on me. And they turned it on me like immediately. And then they start showing me the wrong things I did in my life. And these wrong things, even though they were little, I still felt them. It was amazing because this is the first feeling I have. And this is the first time I'm actually seeing myself back in my body, even though I'm not in real body form. I'm physically seeing Peter. I'm seeing me. I'm seeing Antoni physically in physical bodies. So I'm seeing myself in our bodies, even though we're not in our bodies, right? It's basically like a picture of us, but it's live. And they're showing me, things after another, things I did when I was a teenager. We were all teenagers. We all do stupid, crazy things sometimes. But thank God, I always say to myself, thank God. Because after this next thing they showed me, they take me to when I was married to my first wife. And we were married real young. I think I was 20 years old. She was 20. And now I'm about 27 or so, and we have a 2-year-old son. And I'm young and dumb at the time. I admit it. I left my first wife and my son. I don't know why I did it. At the time, I had this selfishness in me, like a lot of young people have. But I physically became her pain and my son's pain. I felt the pain. The pain was so bad. It got worse and worse and worse. And then they took me away from that, and then they started showing me some other things. The pain physically, mentally got so bad, I started screaming, please, please, dear God, forgive me, forgive me. And it just felt like everything fell, like the grain of salt fell, and now we were back in spirit form. So now myself, Antonia, Peter, they're standing in spirit form again. They're beams of light. And Antonia says, I remember this. Look at yourself, Bill. And I remember looking, because you could physically see everything and feel everything. I look at myself, and I am a beam now, a beautiful, magnificent beam. I look exactly like they look, of beautiful, glorious light. This energy was love. When we there in spirit form, we are part of God's love. We actually feel his love. No matter what religion you are. I'm Christian, but no matter what religion you are, you feel God's love if you believe in God. That is something that's unreal. And now Peter says, Oren's coming. And I didn't know who he was speaking of, but Oren was my third guardian. And when this was a more advanced angel, I called him, or advanced spirit, but I believe to be tens of thousands of years old. And so much knowledge and wisdom just glowing off him. I just felt him. And as soon as he said, hello, Billy, like Peter said that. When Oren said that to me, we don't hear voices in our head. But when I talked about that intuition earlier, remember when I was talking about intuition and how important that is to listen to? But Oren I believe he was the angel that sit on my shoulder and told me this is right, this is wrong. And I'm luckily, I had that intuition. My intuition, my whole lifetime was so strong. It was completely strong. And Oren, he didn't say much right away. He says, we're going to another level. I said, I didn't know what was going on. And we just whisked off again. And then we're in a beautiful hall of crystal. Beautiful, like an auditorium it was. And it was magnificent. And now we're standing in this hall. And now this is something completely different than I just saw, my life review. We're in what I call in my book, the 9th level of enlightenment, the wisdom of the light. What I call in my book, the hall of events. Other near-death experienced people say Akasha records. You hear that term a lot, Akasha records and things like that. Well, I didn't know those terms. So I called it in my book, the hall of events. They showed me in the hall of events. Now we're back in physical form. The only 2 times you see yourself in heaven in your body is in your life review and when you're in the hall of events or Akasha records. They take me on a ride that was unbelievable. But now they're showing me not necessarily my life. They're showing me our whole world's life. They're showing me the past. They're showing me the present of that day, what happened to me. They're showing me the future of what happened to me. When they started out in the Akasha records, again, I'm in this flickering type of screen, and they would stop. They stopped. Their first step, I don't know, I was never in a war. Vietnam was going on when I was 18, but I was not drafted to go in the war because they had this something, lottery or something. The only wars that I knew about, it reminded me of World War II or the Korean War. And I'm physically in this war. And now it takes me from that war, it takes me up to my birth. I see my physical birth happening in time. And now we're moving faster and faster, and it's showing me things and places and different things that happened in our history from after the period of time that I was born. But important things, like it took me to my classroom in I believe it was 1963. I'm not sure what month it was, but it was 19. The principal came over the loudspeaker in the school while we were in class, and I'm 10 years old, 11 years old, and he's saying that President John F. Kennedy just got shot in Dallas, Texas. I remember looking up at the screen. Then I remember they dismissed us from class, and they took us right into my house. I mean, I didn't go for the walk home like I had to do every day. They took us right into my house. My mother sitting at the table, kitchen table, she was crying, and the lady we had working for us, Christine, was both crying. And usually when I walked into my house, it was always like a concert going on, because my mother used to sing with some of the big bands in the olden days, in the 30s and 40s. And Christine sang like, oh my gosh, like I said, she sounded like that movie Lady Sings the Blues, like Diana Ross. She had just a beautiful voice. And she was my second mom, I called her, and because she helped raise me. Because my mom was at the bar and restaurant because she was the cook. So she had to be working all day, my mom. And when I was a little boy, Christine was the one that raised me. Just a beautiful, beautiful woman. Just beautiful. And now, so I'm at this point in our lives. It's taking us again. Now we're traveling again. We're traveling faster and faster. We stop, and it shows everything big that happened in the world, in different countries. It showed us the Vietnam, the end of Vietnam in the 70s. It showed us Bobby Kennedy dying and getting killed, Martin Luther King dying and getting killed. And then it brings me past my near-death experience. I see myself passing away in that bed. And now beyond. The first stop we get at again, we're standing in front of what we had here, the Twin Towers, which you know. And now I'm standing with all my guardians there. It looks like we're our real bodies, but there's smoke all over the place. And it's amazing because we could see everything. So we could see, and I start to get the chills in my body because something is I have friends that work there from the 70s, from when we got out of school to the 90s to the 2000s. I have friends in those buildings, and I started to run, and Oren grabs me, and he says, "Bill, you don't have to run." I says, Oren, my friends. He says, "Bill, we're not here." He stops me and he says, "Bill, what do you see?" And I turned to him and I said, "Oren, I see everything." He says, send me something like the fact, what do you think they see? All these people running. They don't see anything. We saw all the people running. It was amazing. It was at that point when it just stopped and we started moving again. And I think the next stop was, it was Baghdad, when the U.S. bombed Baghdad. Because the only way I could figure out is that there was bombs going off all around us and the way people were dressed. So it was because of that I'm pretty sure that was Baghdad. And his bombs going off again, and I start to run again. And again, that was just instinct. Then I realized I didn't have to run. So, and then from there, it's flickering again. It's flickering. And now we stop what I believe are these times today. We're at a time in our life of choice. One of my 9 principles of enlightenment in my book is called choices. It's the one principle that God gives us. It's the one thing we bring from heaven with us. And intuition as well. is one of my other principles. But through our process of choice, that's how our spirits grow. Now, this is amazing because when they show me all these events, at the same time they were showing me the events, there was different outcomes of the events they're showing me. And it's like almost seeing everything at the same time. Is what would have happened if you'd done this, if you'd done that, if you changed this or changed that. You see plateaus of events all around you, different events under the same sequence. So I'm just at a point where, I'm amazed at this time because now they're showing me outcome. I hear a voice said, Bill, this is your future outcome. And I'm taken to a place that is so horrifying. It's so terribly bad, sickening feeling. It's at a point in life where people are living off each other, taking off each other, stealing from each other, killing just for the basic staples of food and water. I mean, that's how bad it is. I don't know if you've seen movies like Mad Max or some things like that, but to me, it reminded me of that. And I was physically, mentally gone at this stage. I said, it couldn't have came to this. It couldn't have came to this. And then it shifts me over to the other plane. The two important planes it brought me to were the two choices that I believe that we have to make today as humans. We have to make today as humans by listening to our intuition. And we have to serve with kindness, with caring, with service, basically, to help others, not to help and not to kill others. It took me to a place of utopia now. So now I'm in these beautiful fields and it's magnificent and people are just, life and love is just flowing. And you could feel it. You feel this. And so you have this choice in life. You have choices. That's why I say we're at a choice of a decision. We're at a plateau where we have to make this decision as human beings. Our decision has to be made. And it's coming up very quickly now because we're physically in an ascension time frame. So, different things can happen in these times in life. Ascension time frames come once every couple hundred years. And we're in this time frame now. And if we follow this course of disaster after disaster and war after war, this is not a good direction to go in. So hopefully our people that run everything for us in the world will come to the choice of that our world could be saved and at least run on some kind of peaceful level and get along and help each other. And that's almost it up until the final part, which is now. I'm going to explain the final part. We're out of the Hall of Events. It was like a big crystal. The crystals were all around us, and it was like the universe reflecting off those crystals. And then where we went to next, it felt like we were in the universe all around us with beautiful crystal reflection, all the light of the universe. And it was surrounded by beautiful angels. At this point now, we were colored angels, colorful. They were beautiful, white angels, glowing. I felt so much knowledge and wisdom coming out of these angels. I was basically shown or taught, I would say, 9 principles of enlightenment that was so wise and enlightening to me. It was wonderful. And one angel approached me. Besides getting into the principles, right before that, one angel approached me and basically came right into me and said, and it's showing me forms floating down in streams, numbers, and hieroglyphics. I'm looking at physical numbers now. In crystal, they look like crystal to me. And they're lighting and light. Some would light. And they keep on flowing and flowing, these beautiful streams of crystal. Once I felt like he touched my spirit, he was showing me some kind of number system that I believe has something to do with God and our universe that helps us understand things. And I've seen the numbers that stood out to me was the ones that lit. The ones were lighting. The eights were lighting. The nines were lighting. The threes were lighting. The sixes were lighting. And symbols were lighting, like pyramids. And they explained to me. And the explanation is right in my mind. Now, explaining, one is God. 8 represents the universe. They told me I had a life path number. They told me my life path number was 3, the number 3. And then they start showing me things. They're showing me physical distances of, this was amazing. Like in the Buddhist religion and in the Hindu religion, they have, like in the Buddhist religion, I know they have 108 beads on their they say prayers. On each bead, they say a different prayer. And I know in the Hindu religion that 108 makes, so I'm thinking the 108 and the 9, he explained to me that the 9 is the highest number in the universe. Zeros are only used as multipliers. So they don't exist in the universe. It's 1 through 9. So now this 1 and 8 is standing out to me because the Buddhist religion on their beads, like I said, and the prayers, and then in the Hindu religion, the same thing. In their churches, they have candle sequences or steeples on their churches. So how did they know these numbers? I have to understand how they know this number. It's going to get really little something here in a minute because I'm going to explain something to you. And they explained to me these numbers calculate our whole universe. And they showed me, now they're showing me distances. They physically show me, my gosh, I had to write some of this down because there's specific numbers. They show me the diameter of the sun, 800 miles across the diameter. And we're a distance of about 93 million miles, the Earth from the sun. When you divide the 800 into the 93 point something million, when you get the exact number, you're going to come out with. Now, you take the moon, our physical moon, to our Earth. Our physical moon's diameter is 21 miles across. The distance to the Earth from our moon is 200 miles. When you divide that by the 2160, it comes out to 108. Our Earth is 108 times smaller than our sun. I mean, they're explaining to me all these numbers in that soul system. Now, if you take the 108 and divide it by 6, that's your core number of 18. So 18, now, if you divide by 6, you get the core number. So 6 times 3 is 18. And 3 plus 6 is 9. We're back to all the numbers that I've seen. The 3 at one quarter of the pinnacle triangle, the 9 on top, and the 6 on the other bottom. And it was just amazing. That was physically amazing. And then they took me into the 9 principles that was nothing but wisdom and knowledge. And there's principles of love. There's principles of choices. In my book, I have about this. It just takes too much time to explain it all out. But there's principles of taking another life. Should we or shouldn't we? The answer is we shouldn't if we could avoid it. You do have the right to self-defend yourself. But we shouldn't, because if we change someone's life path, who knows what their grandchild, he might have invented the real cure for cancer in a later stage. So you can't interfere with someone's life path. At the same time, they can't interfere with yours. So you do have the right to protect yourself. But choices, like I said before, that's the second principle. There's so much in choices that you have to understand and learn. And it doesn't take a long time to learn. It takes about 15 minutes to learn each one of these principles. And you would know them inside out. But our choices are very important. I'm going to say one thing about them. It's our choice that we make in life that enlightens our spirit. And that's how our spirits grow. So that's the one thing I'm going to say about choice. And then we have another principle of our intuition, like I've been talking about along the way. like Oren was my intuition through my whole lifetime. We have to stop and listen to our intuition. They are there for a reason. They're pulling us back and putting us on the right path. In most cases, if you see an intuition that comes at you more often and often and more often, that means you have to follow that intuition. It's very important in your life. We have principles of service. Our services, again, is not only service to help others, it's kindness, it's sympathy, it's forgiveness. It goes so, I go into it so deeply in the book because every one of these has a ladder. When you get to the love principle, the principle of love, because the love that we feel up there, there's no way of explaining that love here. It's a much different kind of love. It's like taking our love. If you think of someone or something, or some people love their jobs even, but if you think of a child, if you have a child, how much you love them, and I love my children to the end of the world. But there's 9 ladders of love. That's so important. After I'm bombarded with these beautiful 9 principles by all these angels of wisdom, I call them, this beautiful young spirit approaches me. Remember the angel of numbers? He told me my life path number was 3, and my alert sign, he said, you have an alert sign for your life in your life path. And my numbers was 66. He says, always pay attention. I have to pay attention when I see this. When he told me that, I left that part out till now. When he told me that, while he was showing me the numbers, I already knew the 66. Because for some reason, since I was a little boy, when those numbers popped up, no matter where I was, if they would pop up 7, 8, 9 times a day, 66, like I'm driving a car as a teenager, and I look down at my speedometer at 66, then I look up, I'm on exit 66, then I look over the watch at 6 past 6 in the clock in the car, and then I see it more often, and something is about to happen in my life. Now, good or bad, something important is going to happen. It doesn't mean that it's got to be bad. It means just that something in my life was going to be affected. So now I wanted you to know about that because it's important. This beautiful spirit approaches me, a young, glowing, bright spirit, very young and joyful, full of love. Now my wife, I was married at this time when it happened. I had my second son coming, and she usually does the Tucson show with me every year, but she was pregnant, and she was due in August. In September, she was due. And it's February. She had terrible morning sickness. She couldn't come to the show. This beautiful spirit that approaches me says, you understand the 9 principles of enlightenment? I says, yes, I understand them. She says, you must return. I did everything. I remember practically in my spirit yelling, screaming, I don't want to go. Please don't send me back. Please, please. She says, you must return. Like that, very soft. I said, don't, please. I beg to stay. I physically beg to stay. That's how wonderful and beautiful it is on that side. When you're in heaven and you're with God, you're part of God's love. You feel God within you. We all have pieces of God within us. You physically feel God when you get to heaven. I said, don't send me back to that. The last thing I hear is that I am 6 of 6. You must return. And next thing I know, I'm being drawn back through like a void. Nothing like going. Nothing like that beautiful feeling. That feeling is starting to fade. I'm being pulled back. It feels like I'm moving at the speed of light again, but backwards in the grayness. It wasn't even bright anymore. And I remember being sucked right into my body. And then the only thing that moved was my throat. Because my whole body was paralyzed in bed. But if you ever recall being underwater for a long time, and you finally hit the top of water. I don't know if you ever scuba dive in your life or you're ever at the bottom of a pool and you needed to gasp for air. I just got that when I physically got there and I went just like that to get as much air in my lungs as I possibly could. My arms weren't moving, but my throat moved, and that's the only thing that moved. And I just laid there, and now I'm laying in bed. I thought I was paralyzed. I thought I was completely paralyzed. But then all of a sudden, the pain starts coming back, and then tingling through my arms and my legs start coming back. And then I'm feeling this heat in my body again. I guess from fever or whatever. I don't know. And how I'm laying in the body, my feeling is back somewhat. And because it comes back slow. If you ever know when your arm goes dead, if you're laying on it, or your leg goes dead, it takes a little while to get the circulation going. Finally get that back. And I remember reaching over. The last thing I remember was reaching over to the phone. I said, I think I picked up, I know I called the operator at the hotel. And I said, send one of my people or something into my working with me there. Send someone to get me. And I must have passed out at that stage. I don't know how I got to the hospital, but I opened my eyes. I was in the hospital on the gurney. Again, they got me hooked up with IV, and they got the oxygen mask on me. And that was my story, other than one thing. After I returned home, in the 6th month of the 6th day, my daughter was born. And today I have a 24-year-old daughter, and she's magnificent. She's so brilliant. She's my beautiful colored light, that young light that came to me that forced me to come home. I believe that in my heart. I'm getting the chills now when I talk about it. And she said, I'm 6 of 6. And then she was born June the 6th, the 6th month on the 6th day. So after I got home, I told my wife, I didn't tell anybody. Even in Tucson, when I woke up in the hospital, I was afraid. I didn't know what happened to me. I didn't know what a near-death experience was. I had no idea about any of this stuff. I was a business person, and had nothing about NDEs, no knowledge whatsoever of them. And especially in the 70s, I didn't know about them because they weren't talking about them at all back then. I went to my doctor. He said, why are you here? I said, well, I guess I need a physical. I didn't even know how to tell him at first. So he gives me an examination real quick. He says, well, everything sounds good. Took my blood pressure, took my pulse, listened to my heart, did my respirations. He says, everything sounds good. I said, Dr. Vasquez, could I talk to you? And he said, well, is it personal? Or I said, yeah, it's more personal. He says, okay, well, follow me. So I followed him back to his office. And now I'm sitting down in his office. He said, just give me a minute. He's waiting, filling out something. And then he closed this. Luckily, I set up the last appointment for the day, so he didn't have anybody waiting. He said, what could I do for you? So I just let loose. I had to tell somebody. I told him everything. He says to me, Bill, I want to do one more examination on you. So we went back to the exam room. Now he hooks me up with it's 1994, so it's the old electrical cardiogram machines with the paper coming out of them. And he's going like this, and he's reading slowly and stopping. And he's reading slowly and stopping. And he's reading like this and like this. And he says, I'm going to do something else on here. I don't know what he did. He turns around and says to me, Bill, when did you have your heart attack? I said, Dr. Vasquez, you've been my doctor my whole life. I never had a heart attack. He said, your heart looks to me like it was a gross heart attack. He said, that's the night of my near-death experience, I guess. Takes me back in the office and he says, I want you to know, you are the 7th person that told me this story. You are my 7th patient that told me a very, very similar story. 2 of them were exactly like yours. And then I had some relief. And he told me to buy a couple of books. He says, what I believe you had was a near-death experience. And he said, Bill Tortorella, a lot of people get to find God in their lifetime. He said, Bill, you got to meet him. And I was just enjoying it.
That's so, so beautiful, Bill. And many times whilst you were talking, I was tearing up, and so many things that resonated, so many beautiful things. And I also want to compliment you for being an amazing storyteller, because I think it's not just the experience itself, but it's also the way you bring it to life that really makes a difference for us who haven't had that opportunity or such an experience.
Right, yes.
To come close to understanding.
Well, once you feel that, you live that. I mean, that's what brings that passion into it for me, myself. I mean, other people explain it differently, sometimes. I think because we're all individual spirits.
You mentioned the incident when you were a paramedic and the girl should, by all logic, should have been dead.
All logic.
Should have.
Every single bit of it.
And you mentioned one of the moments when you saw how bad the situation was that you yelled out to God to help her.
Yes.
What happened from your newfound spiritual reality, which you had after that experience?
Right.
What actually happened that saved her?
When I yelled out to God, that's why I believe our guardians. We have one guardian of transport, one guardian every time we help for God, pray to God for help, and pray as much as you possibly can, because that's our phone line to heaven. All right? We have a guardian, our guardian angel, around us our whole life when we call on them. But I believe in my heart, they're around a lot, but I believe when you call on God, they're immediately there. And that's when I saw Peter's hand come on her head with my hand at the same time. I seen Peter's hand alongside of mine. And I'm in my near-death experience at that time when that happened. I mean, not when it physically happened, but in my near-death experience, I saw that. And I believe your third angel is the one that gives you your intuition and knowledge and tries to keep you on the right path in life. You always wonder, why are people bad? Why do they choose to murder? That means only one thing. They just go off their path. They're not here. They're off their path. They're creating ripples in the universe when they do that. That's why these things like explosions and atomic bombs and things like that, they create ripples in our universe that hurts our universe. We can't have any of that. So it's very important. We try to, seek peace through kindness and love like that, and service, of course.
And speaking of choices, you said we all have choices to make, and we need to think of the greater good and not just of ourselves, but also our community when we make those choices.
Absolutely. That is the most important thing. The reason why, because our spirit grows through a process of choice through our whole lifetime. It's almost like every time that we do the right thing in something that's important, it's like we get a little star. I believe we come from the star. We're the star, we're light. And it's like we get a little star added to our spirit. And I believe it enlightens our spirit, and that's how our spirit grows through that process of choice. So choice is one of the principles. It's very important that people understand that. But there's a lot of things that have to do with choice. So, if people could get a chance to read my book, if they do get a chance to read it, it explains everything in there on choices. But if they understand that one thing, at least that one thing, that's so important, that your choices could affect others to a point where you destroy their life, or you can make their life better.
When we come to this topic of choices, some of us have more power over others than others of us. One of, I think, the biggest fears for most of us right now is we're at a turning point in our world, right? We need to make the right choices, but sometimes it feels like the ordinary person does not have as much to say or to impact the overall situation. If we want the best for our world, if we want the best for our planet, what is within our power? What can we do to help situations?
When I go to church, for example, people pray for this because this is going on in our world. We're at a crossroads now. We're at a point in civilization, our civilization, where these choices have to be made by the right people. And I believe if people talk to in our country, it's their senators, it's their congressmen in our country. If people stand up, write letters for what their true feelings are. No one wants war. No one really wants that. I mean, there's some people that might be benefiting by that, yes. But the majority, like you said, they don't want that. So I think I just know in my heart that our decisions have to be right. And if one of the most important decisions that I think we need to make is a lot of us need to come together. People have to understand, like you said, a small group of people are running everything. I just believe that people have to come together in their beliefs system. That's the most important thing. What would happen if everybody came together? You say it's impossible, right? After certain things start hurting people. So I've noticed throughout this last couple of years that people, for example, my kids are old enough to have, their own jobs and everything now. They're finding it hard to live because our inflation here in the U.S. has gotten so high. It's very hard. It's very hard. My middle son's, graduated college and he's in college all the time. He's 29 years old and still in college after graduating college, just because he wants to learn more and more and more. He's so brilliant, but having a hard time finding the right type of job. I just can't fathom it sometimes. And he's at a point where between him and his fiance, they just decided to get married. He gave her an engagement ring, and I'm so happy for them. But between them both, they're struggling with their pets. You go to the vet, their cat got sick. It wound up costing $3,000. Oh my gosh. I mean, so everything is just at a hand price. I hope things come down, in the future. I think that trying to stick together, trying to listen to each other's. If we listen to other people, whether they're with you or against you, that has no bearing on it. It's that if you support things with physical facts, that you have physical facts, I don't think they could be denied unless somebody's got it in their mind that their mind is right and their physical fact is wrong. I don't know. But again, I try not to get political on these things because I believe I try to get for everyone this experience. I want everyone to, like in our country, it's Democrat and Republican. And, we've always lived together fine my whole lifetime. My mother was a Republican. My father was a Democrat. And they lived together just fine. I mean, we had friends growing up our whole lifetimes. Some of us were Democrat at the time, and then at the other times, and some of us were Republican. The whole key is that we just have to learn to be the way we was.
Coming together, looking for things that bring us together, that make us feel more connected to each other, rather than looking for division, rather than feeling pitted against each other.
Right.
Because that just comes from fear, I believe.
Right. And stop spewing hatred.
Exactly.
To spew hatred is the same as destroying your spirit. So if I tell everybody I know that's older and stuff, don't bring any hatred with you over to the other side. See, when I passed, remember I said I was a businessman, right? I was an exciting part of my life. I was all over the world. There's stories about that in my book too. That's very interesting stories. But I was a businessman, and I didn't have any hatred for anyone. in my life. I mean, if I didn't get along with one vendor, I had another vendor I'd go with. But I got along with most of the people, and they were really good with me, to me. So everything went well at the time for me. And I think it's very important. The one thing that I really felt strong on the other side, was that you can't bring hate with you. So for some reason, that was a message I received. And I kept receiving that message after I came back. No hate. There should be no hate in your life. Only love, or the best you could be, as far as, love is concerned.
Bill, you talked about in your life review seeing the pain that you caused your first wife.
Oh.
Coming back to this reality with this newfound insight of that, what did you make of it? And I think this is a good lesson for all of us, because I'm sure that all of us have hurt people at some point in our lives. So how do we make amends, or how do we recognize when we grow through our experiences, and how do we come back and say, listen, I know what I've done to you wasn't right, and I'm sorry for it?
Well, I did. I went to my first wife, God rest her soul. She died at a very young age. I'm 71, but, that was 21 years ago she died. And 50 years old, she passed away from a cancer. And I was close to her all the time anyway, because we had a son. So we always remained friends, my first wife and I. But I did, explain to her that how sorry I was. It's very, 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 very important. I mean, it's very, you said it yourself, you learn from that experience. So when you learn these things and you physically know it's not the right thing to do, why repeat it, right? So now what you like to do or want to do should be to make up for it in some way, some form. In a form, and it doesn't have to be that specific situation, because you might not be around that situation anymore. But in turn for others, remember, every time that our gift of service or kindness, or this is a hard one for a lot of people, forgiveness. Forgiveness is very, very hard for a lot of people. But in turn, when we learn to forgive in our heart, our spirit grows immensely. When you learn to finally say, it's all right, you'll find out, even if that person hurt you so badly, that you have internally forgive them, and your spirit will be relieved of something that shouldn't be there. So that's why I say, any kind of hate we don't want to bring over to the other side. We mustn't bring it over. It's I don't know, that I can't explain. I just had that experience put in my mind there, that it's very important to bring over love when you're crossing. And that's why a lot of times your guardians, your angels, you'll hear of people that are dying, and all of a sudden they see, there's Uncle John or Aunt Rose or my mother or my father. And that's because they make it easy for us. So they appear to them. They want an easy transition over to the other side. There's an in-between. That's the in-between. That's what some people call the veil. But that's really the in-between. Like, I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I had kidney stone operations, right? And I'm scheduled for my operation I had to go in for the operation twice, because the first time they couldn't get the kidney stones out. And the second time they had to go inside me again. But my operation was scheduled for 9 o'clock in the morning. Here it was. I'm downstairs at 8 in the waiting room from 8:30 in the morning. Now it's 12 o'clock at night. I haven't eaten anything. They would not let me drink too much, through the day. Finally, they say, your surgery's next. You'll be going in at 12:20 or 12:30. I'm sitting there, haven't eaten anything all day. They come over and shot something into my IV that all of a sudden, I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden I hear the nurse faint, but it was a scream. He's going. And I went to that in between. I didn't go to the other side. I went to that part where that feeling came back over me. Remember the feeling I told you when I left my body and that beautiful feeling I had? I went to that part and said to myself, it's all right. I remember that. But then the doctors must have come running over and shot something else in me and got me right back immediately. That's why I think when a lot of people that die on a hospital operating table, a lot of people only get to that, what I call the first to second level, where they experience the out of body part. They're floating above. They're actually sitting down, some of them watching the operation, and they're watching it up from above the top of the room. And we know this for a fact. I mean, people have come back and they tell you what's on the label of the back of the light that was shining down on you. But they get hit with a defibrillator 3 times, and then they fly back into their body. But they do have that out-of-body, near-death experience, so they get to feel that love and that passion. And some of them might be out for a couple of minutes before they get back, 3 minutes, so they get a little wider version of it. There's so many different levels of it. Now, that's what my doctor told me when he said, I think you had a near-death experience. He said, the people that died in the hospital, he said, had, pretty short experiences, but near-death experiences. They died. They physically flatlined on a gurney, and it'd take them, 2 or 3 minutes to get them back. But he said it was the people's stories that were very, very similar to mine was the people that died in their houses or they died on the way to the hospital. And they were out a much longer period of time. Like I remember when I was a paramedic one time, we had a call where the call was on 135th Street, North Miami Beach. Now that's all the way over to the beach side by the water. And Miami's downtown where you got to go across the 35th Street to 95 and then go blocks down. On the ride is about 30 minutes altogether. And wife made us take, at the time, nowadays you go to the first trauma center. But at those days, you had to go where the patient wanted to go. So me and my partner could see the guy was having a stroke in the bed. We walk in this dimly lit room. He's got a table full of medicines. There must have been about 25 bottles on that table. He's having a stroke. We could see it. His whole face is caved in, on the one side. So I pulled the wife over to the side. I said, we can't take him to the VA. It's too far. He's not going to last. And she said, no. She started screaming at us. He must go to the VA. He must go to the VA. I said, not Parkway. I said, North Miami General Hospital. North Miami is less than 5 minutes from here. I said, that's 35 minutes from here. He won't make it. We had to take him because you had to go. In those days, they could sue you or something. The company made it. Now it's different nowadays. Nowadays, we would have been in charge of that, where they were going, right? But 3 blocks in, he was already in cardiac arrest. So 3 blocks in the ambulance going towards 95, he was already in cardiac arrest. Now I was working on him for 30 minutes with compression. I'm doing the 15 to 2, the 15 to 2, the 15 to 2. I'm breathing. I got the ambu bag hooked up with the oxygen hooked into him, and then I'm doing the compressions again. Then the oxygen, then the compressions again, then the oxygen, then the compressions again. And I'm doing this for 30 minutes. When we got to the hospital, I'm drenched. He's in complete cardiac arrest. We get to the VA, there's no one there. Danny called it in, but the call didn't go to the VA. For some reason, it went to Jackson Memorial Hospital. We're at the VA now with no one ready for us. So the nurse sees us come in. I yell cardiac arrest. She goes running to get the doctor in the back. She flips on the lights because there was no one in the emergency room itself. And the other nurses come running over. I'm still doing CPR on the guy on the gurney. I'm standing up on a little thing they had. Now I'm on top of it. I'm doing CPR. And finally the doctor comes in. Now this man has been dead for 30 minutes. He's completely dead for 30 minutes. The doctor comes in. I said, Doc, I've been working on it for 30 minutes. I tell him the whole experience. So he comes over and feels his femoral artery. That's in the leg, in the inner thigh of the leg. So he says, yeah, you're doing good. Keep pumping. Keep pumping. He says, I can feel it. down here. I said, okay, I'm pumping. He goes into his bag and he's making up an epinephrine shot. It's called epinephrine, and he shoots it right into the guy's heart. So I'm still doing the compression, and all of a sudden I feel the guy's heart start up like a locomotive under my hands. It's coming up as I'm going down. The heart's beating me up like this, and the heart starts up. It was going about 180 beats per minute. You know, it was wild. I said, Doc, he's back. And oh my gosh, this was amazing. He came over, he pushed me away, put the stethoscope on his chest, and he turned to us and said, boys, he's back. And that was a feeling unbelievable. I'll never forget that. That man was dead for 30 minutes. And so, you know, in some cases, you know, CPR works well, you know, and he came back. So that was a good feeling as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a very difficult line of work, but moments like these, I think, make it so rewarding.
Well, I believe because of all those things I did in that field for years and years, I believe that was one of the rewards that I had to see heaven. Mm-hmm. I believe that was one of the reasons why they let me see heaven, because on an everyday basis, we try to save people's life every day, you know? So, absolutely. But you don't have to be in that position to go to heaven. I mean, you have to just be a good, kind, forgiving person and try to do as much service as you possibly can for others. And that's going to make your spirit grow.
Words to live by. You mentioned seeing 9/11.
Don't forget, now this is the first thing after I passed my birth that I see. I was already thinking about this when I came back. What do you do? What do you say? I was back for years. I'm back for years. Nothing has happened. I say, I'm not saying anything. It was after the 9/11 that I said, what they showed me, that was the physical proof that I had. The physical proof of that, besides the things I saw of myself when I was younger. But when was 9/11 going to be? I didn't know when it was going to be. We're in the midst of all the smoke. We could see through the smoke, yes, and the people running. Yes, we could see that. But, you know, some people knew, like my wife knew, a close friend of mine knew. But I also seen other things. Remember when I told you the Mad Max days? We don't have to get to that, because I witnessed burning cities. I witnessed things that happened just this past year. I witnessed things that happen now. I got in my first book I wrote 20 years ago. I wrote 20-something years ago, after 9/11. I wrote, the machines, they're going to be taking over. We have to save the jobs. I have a whole story in my first book about that. I have a story of paramedics in the book. I thought about maybe doing a story like that, where the paramedics arrive by a flying ambulance, where today it's different. I mean, where you can wear sensors. Now, what in your clothing or in jewelry? And at the time, I wrote it in the story as a smart shirt. I explained it, that it would take the senses of your body and recognize if your body was in cardiac arrest. I wrote that before they had any knowledge about this.
Yeah. And now we have that.
That was in my first book called Choices.
Bill, how can people find you and connect with your work?
It's an easy way to find me would be on my email. My email is billtortorella@gmail.com, and my website is just Bill Tortorella. It's my name. And my book is called The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of Delight. And it's by Bill Tortorella. And it's on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and all the selling platforms. So if anybody's interested in finding out the story, because the front part of the book explains how we're interconnected with the other side our whole life. So there's many, many, many interesting stories there. And they all come together within the book. So I just did a documentary film that's going to be released in December. That's called What Every Soul Knows, and the Joy of Remembering What We Simply Forget. And of course, I'm on Facebook, so people can reach me on Facebook and Instagram.